Good morning. What a wonderful group. I hear that we've got lots and lots of people. So if you've got some seats in the middle, maybe you'd move over a little so our latecomers can actually fit in our room. But welcome to KM World, Taxonomy Boot Camp, Enterprise Search and Discovery, Text Analytics, and our newest event, Enterprise AI World. We're thrilled to have you. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm Jane Dysart, conference chair, and I missed last year, so I missed everyone. Very sad. So happy to be here and thrilled to have so many sponsors that are represented in our Enterprise Solutions Showcase. Hopefully many of you enjoyed the goodies, the fun, the meeting with people, the chatting about what's going on last night in the reception. There will be another one tonight at 5 o'clock in the Enterprise Solutions Showcase. We also will have our coffee break following our keynotes this morning in the showcase, as well as a boxed lunch at lunchtime. So following our keynotes this morning, we are going to pull some air walls in this room. So we're going to say, out you go have your coffee in the showcase, and we'll get our room set up for our multiple tracks of learning events. Have you figured out the program yet? It's pretty complex, and it's got a lot of stuff. And I want to know how you are planning to be in two places at once. But that's the other thing. I'm hoping that when you are in the room, if you get your ahas, ideas, hear something that you hadn't heard before, that you will share it on social media. We have hashtags for all of the events, but the general one is KM World. And we have Facebook page, we have LinkedIn groups. So please, share what you hear so others can know what your latest ahas are. It's interesting. I mean, we're all about knowledge sharing, and we do it so well here. So hopefully we can do it with our broader community as well. And I mention the KM community because it's a really wonderful group. And unfortunately this year, we've lost a few of our KM friends. Larry Pruzak, whom many of you have known, and Bill Ives just most recently. And so we actually have a video wall, which you can get to from our KM World website. And you can just put a little video up there. So I'd like to suggest, if you have a moment and you have a interesting story about Larry or Bill or an event where you met up with them and had a great chat, please do share. We are thinking about how else we can honor some of these KM pioneers and friends. So just think about that. What else do I want to remember to tell you here? Hopefully, the program has all the information that you want. I think on page 6 and 7, it gives you a view of everything that's going on at the same time. So I know you can't be in two places at once, but hopefully that will give you an overview to decide where you want to be. We have a lot of really wonderful speakers, and I hope that you will chat with them in the showcase during coffee breaks and receptions, and connect around at various times. I mean, I think networking and, again, as I say, sharing ideas and chatting is what we're all about at KM World. There is wireless in all the foyer areas and the session rooms, and the instructions are in the program, so hopefully you can find those. It's the JW Marriott Network, I believe, and the password is Semaphore 2023 because they are sponsoring that. So thank you very much. And again, thank you to our very many and supportive sponsors. And I hope that you will connect with them in the showcase and say, thanks for being here, because we do appreciate everything they do. Okay, I think that's it for all the morning announcements. Hopefully you will enjoy your day, but I want to start it off with our first speaker, Dion Hinchcliffe, the VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research. He's a co-author and author. His book was Social Business by Design, which I want to tell you was the first time he was here with us at KM World. I think it's probably like 10 years ago, right? Yeah. Fun. Anyway, he is an industry watcher and analyst with a strong focus on enterprises and the digital workplace. He works with leadership teams of Fortune 500 and Global 2000 firms to drive successful change with emerging digital methods, including employee experience, online community, digital business models, internet ecosystems, Internet of Things, workplace or workforce collaboration, and the future of work. And please welcome Dion Hinchcliffe to talk to us about tech-driven enterprise thrills and chills and the future of work.
All right, good morning, everyone. So welcome to the first full main day of KM World, and I'm thrilled to be here, and thanks, Jane, for inviting me to come and talk to you all. As she mentioned, it's been 10 long years since I stood before you telling you what was happening then in the world that's only gotten more advanced, bigger, more sophisticated. And I spend much of my time, as Jane indicated, doing research and working with chief information officers around the world on applying all the things that you're talking about here at KM World to the digital employee experience, to the digital workplace. Everything is becoming digitized in what we do. And the work that you do in your daily jobs is becoming front and center with the revolutions that we're seeing taking place in technology and business today. So I'm going to try and walk you through, give you a panoramic view of my research. So by the end of it, we're going to talk about the things that are happening, the thrills, the amazing things that we can do today that we're just learning about, how profound they're going to become in the near future, and the chills. There's some challenges in doing all of this. There's great responsibility. When you are given great power, as we are today with technology, we have great responsibility as well. We have to take care with some of these technologies. So I'm not going to spend too much on the chills piece, but I'm going to highlight where you are going to have to really focus on getting it right. We do have a great responsibility. But with that, we also have great opportunity. And so by the end of this talk, you'll have a pretty clear sense of where we're going to end up by the end of this decade. So it's going to be quite a tour. And I have a lot of visuals with my research, and you're free to use them however you like. All of them are licensed with Creative Commons. You can take notes and screenshots, of course, if you want. The deck is not yet on the KM World website, but it will be, because I get a lot of questions about that. So let's dive right in. Let's see what's about to happen. So when we talk about the future of work, and at least for this session, we're going to split it into two halves. First, we need to design our digital workplaces more intelligently than we have before, more deliberately. I'll talk about what I see when I go into organizations and how they're trying to provide the knowledge management technology, enterprise search, and all these powerful new tools, how they're trying to situate them, and they have to do that on top of a very complex landscape of the things they already have. How can we do that better? So I'm going to give you the kind of the full strength vision of where I see organizations are trying to kind of harness all of this, pay down the enormous amounts of technical debt we have with all of our legacy technology, and I had all these new things. And then we're going to look at the hot topic of the day, which is what everyone's trying to figure out, is how do I apply AI to my business? What does it mean? What are the key moving parts? What are the most important things to look at? And at the very end, I'll give you kind of a teaser of my latest research, which is where all this is going. We can no longer plan far ahead. I used to work on 3-year and 5-year strategies. We never hear about that anymore. Now it's 1- and 2-year strategies, 9-month strategies, because things are changing so quickly, so exponentially. And so we'll talk about all these things as we go through. But I like to begin with the basics, making sure we're grounded in what we're about. What are we really trying to do? That's the question we have to ask as things get more complicated. Complexity is the top 2 challenges that organizations cite. Unfortunately, cybersecurity is the other one. But complexity of today's operating environment and all this technology that we have. And civilization improves when the formerly complex becomes simple. And that is the climb that we've had over the last 200 years of technological advance, is constantly making the complex simpler. And AI is a big step function in making that happen. But first and foremost, we have to focus on what I see in these 4 buckets. If you talk to any enlightened organization today, roughly some version of this is what they're trying to achieve. One, they want to create shared value. Right? We're doing all this to exchange value, to co-create together for mutual benefit. And what we do has to do that in order for it to be sustainable. And this last piece, scalable yet sustainable. Growth is a good thing. We also have to now realize that it also creates its own challenges. We have to do it sustainably. We have to be responsible. These technologies we are now rolling out are enormously powerful and have the potential to cause harm even, inadvertently in many cases, right? Even if it's just revealing private information of our customers and other stakeholders. So we have to. Trust is going to be one of the biggest focus areas for technology going forward, making sure that we trust the information we're being given, the information we're creating, and the systems that all run it all, and protecting privacy and safety, and being fair in the world. And also we've learned along the last since late 2019, that we have to be more resilient. The world is a bumpy place when things change exponentially, and that's where we are. We're deep into the era of exponential change, and it's only going to get faster from here. And so we have to learn to be resilient. We have to build resilient systems. We have to be personally resilient and adaptable to change, all right, and not easily disrupted. These are the things that we want to make sure we're doing all these things. We want to carry them out. And most of all is that we're supporting what makes us human. There's no point in any of this technology unless it is serving us. And so I've done, if you've attended my talks before, you know that, for example, we know that innovation comes often from the edge, from where you least expect it. And we have to be tolerant of our differences and tolerant of the interesting ideas that are coming in from the edge. And organizations that last the longest are the ones that are culturally tolerant at the margins and the edge and let all that new come in. They don't have that not invented here. And so for us to get through the advances that are coming, because AI is only beginning, and I'll explain to what some of its shortcomings are in just a moment, but we have to be ready to do these things on top of the change that's coming. And it's all achievable. It can be done. So again, I like to really make sure that we're all grounded in what we're trying to do. And this is my latest view. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, translated to what we need to do for our digital lives, our digital work lives in particular. And if you ask nowadays, if you look at a lot of employee survey data and what workers actually want the most, and they want to reach their potential. They want to reach their maximum potential. They want to be fulfilled in doing so. And if we look at what we're doing with IT, this is the hierarchy of needs. And at the bottom is the most fundamental things like access to information, to our systems. This is where the security layer comes in. We also need access to our colleagues, coworkers, partners, and suppliers. And then once we have that basic fundamental access, everything in technology turns out to be an accessibility problem. It's taken me a lot of years to come to that realization in many debates, but access is the most fundamental thing. The next piece is usability. A lot of organizations are still stuck at that level in providing fundamental usability, even for simple things. So the number one complaint that workers have today is it's still too hard to get into the systems. And it's too hard to use them, and it's taking 2 months to onboard the typical employee to learn the 30 apps that they have to use to run, to do their job. And so the usability is still limited. Once it's usable and you have access, then you can enable workers. You can give them ability to find information, to automate things, to engage with the organization. Now they have connected to everybody, and it's easy to do, and they're able to collaborate and share knowledge. Then they get engaged in what the organization's doing and what they like to do with their career. And after that, they become empowered. And at each layer, you can design, this is what I've learned, you can specifically design the digital employee experience to realize all of these things here. And if you're doing that, then eventually you become effective workers with autonomy to solve the problems in front of them. This is that famous quote, possibly apocryphal, of Steve Jobs, who said, "I hire the smartest people in the world, and I have them tell me what to do." Right, that's a great quote, and that's where we're all going, is that ability to say we're going to create the world's most empowered knowledge workers, and we're going to have them contribute to the organization's mission, and in the process, they're also going to become fully self-actualized. If you ask a Gen Z or a millennial what they want, that's what they want. There's not more than a paycheck, even. This is the first time I've ever seen it in the data where more than anything else, even getting paid, they want to realize their potential and do good in the world and achieve their mission. And we have to design our digital workplaces, our digital environments to make this possible. We have to remove the barriers. Our job is to remove the barriers and help people get to the top of this hierarchy of needs. It'll take years, and it's never going to be perfect. The perfect is the enemy of the good. We can do a lot more than we're doing, and I'm going to walk you through what some of those things are, specifically that will remove those barriers and help us get to where we want to be. This is the future of work, is climbing up this hierarchy. And so when I go into a typical organization, what I often see is I create these charts. I say, I want to see what the worker is facing, and they usually have an environment that's bristling with technology. When I go into an organization, I also, not only do I build my own map of this, I also ask for the spreadsheet of all the systems that run their business. And even in a small organization, it's hundreds of systems. In large organizations, it's thousands. A typical financial services organization with 100,000 workers has about 3,500 apps that run the business. Most people don't realize the level of complexity we've achieved. And those, by the way, that's almost all a good thing. They all do something. They provide a function. They automate some process that before was done by hand and done slowly and with poor quality, and now is done faster and with better quality. And so we group these systems into 3 buckets. Systems of record, which is what we started with. Systems of engagement, which is really how we start sharing information and collaborating, either at a team level, department level, project level, industry level. There's absolutely amazing things that connect whole entire organizations and industries together to achieve common goals. And then we have our productivity information tools that we use personally. And all that has different layers of access and enablement and and they all work differently. That's one of the biggest challenges. All these systems accumulate. They build up around the edges, and they're brought in by the organization, by the division, by the department, by the team, and half of it is shadow IT now. When I started tracking shadow IT, I've written a lot about it. It was 10%. We thought that back in 2000. I would come up on stages like this and go, 10% of IT, and it could be 25%, a quarter of IT one day could not be under our control. Now it's over half. It's actually just over 50%. And these are not usually systems of record, although I'm seeing that too now for the first time. especially things like CRM. So this accumulation has become too fragile and unsustainable because workers can't absorb this complexity. There's a limit to what humans can absorb. It's a cognitive load. There's a certain cognitive load you have before you have to do something to make it better. And we are here at that something now. We have to do something to make it better. And so one of the things I see organizations doing, there's many strategies for dealing with complexity in the digital workplace. And some are easier to do than others. But in general, we have to understand what we're even building. What is the digital worker journey? What does that look like? And it should be what's on the right, this coherent experience. We kind of understand the hiring process and onboarding, and then we understand how they run projects and do their work and collaborate, how they do all their overhead things, how they grow and develop, all these wonderful things we want them to do, and we offboard them and get them out. And we should have thought through how to make all that climb that hierarchy we talked about. That's the logical way to do it. But we haven't built our digital workplaces to be logical. We did it to solve specific problems, and they accumulate. It's different. So workers are often they create their own ad hoc employee experience out of all the apps and the data and the processes that they're shown or given or create. And we don't really have much of a plan here. But some organizations, and I notice that it tends to be leading organizations. We see this in both technology companies, management consulting. They're making this transition, saying, no, we can't do this. Like one of my favorite stories is the story of Accenture, who has designed this linear process on the right for the top 100 moments in a worker's life at the company. It can be anything, starting a project, hiring somebody, going on maternity leave, whatever. They've designed a consistent experience with best practices because their workers are the most important thing. That's how they make money. If they're not enabled, they're not out there billing. So we see that. Companies that tend to where the workers are really high leverage knowledge workers are starting to say, all right, we're not going to provide this accidental grab bag of tools. We're going to give you something that's more organized, more structured. And this is important because AI is going to turn all of this on its head again. It's going to make a lot of things that were complex simple, though. That's the good news. But if you're still more on the left than you are on the right, you're going to have more of a challenge because you don't have a place to put AI necessarily. We'll talk about where we'll put AI as we go through this. So in reality, most companies are still organized around the industrial era functional specialization, right? We've got marketing, sales, operations, service, and R&D, and they all have apps and systems built for that function. They're all highly specialized. They're not designed for change. They're designed for maximum efficiency in processes that don't change very often and are not very tightly integrated. Well, guess what, folks? Probably don't have to tell you. The news is things change all the time, and they are tightly integrated now. But our systems are not. So we still have, we had a hard time doing something like this on the right because all these systems, I have all these databases and little app pictures here to show you that all these systems were siloed. Well, now integration is easier than ever before. In fact, you can use AI to say, I need to integrate A with B, right here, give me the code for that, and it will. The formerly complex is gotten a lot simpler. So some of the barriers to doing this have just completely fallen away, and we're not even thinking about what to do with that power. We're not even thinking about what to do with that power when we have enormous power now that we haven't had before. So what we see is growing, I'm going to use this visual a couple times. There's this real desire to create a center of gravity for the employee experience. I get asked that question probably more than any other question. Where does digital employee experience belong? Is it a place you go to? Or is it just us using all these systems that we're given? Is there a center of gravity around it? And yes, most companies are trying to build some center of gravity. And we see this rise of what I call the employee experience platform. It's actually mostly integrated out of what you already have. But it's something that allows you to actually produce the experiences that you need for that journey that you want to start reducing the technical debt on and start building that journey, a more sensible journey with your best practices and your culture built right into it. That's what we want. And that's what organizations are steadily moving to. And have basically everything that's on here, all these systems are going to be a little bit better organized into an employee experience stack. That's the big picture. And every vendor is trying to build some version of this. You know, like if you want to UR here, like look at Microsoft Viva, for example. That's like their big employee experience construct. And they're saying Teams is where we're going to put the employee experience, which I thought was an interesting supposition. So I went and I surveyed some of you are members of it, and my employee experience board of advisors, what I think are the top 50 projects in the world that are revolutionizing employee experience. And yeah, 31% of them are going to center digital employee experience in Teams, which I think is interesting. I think there's pros and cons to that, but just to show you where people are thinking and where, just giving you a you are here data, where this conversation in concrete terms is actually going. So it's interesting. So a new, more holistic employee experience stack is being crafted, molded out of the clay that is the systems of our business. And all the databases and all the large language models and all the other things are all going to be part of that, right? And integrated together, and it's all going to be on a work from anywhere foundation. You got to be able to make this all work for both in-office and remote workers and make them equitable. We'll talk about hybrid work too as we go along. But anyway, this is where we think we're going. This is where it seems to be going. When I talk to a lot of folks out there doing this. I advise on this all the time, and this is the conversation at the most strategic level. If I'm talking to the head of employee experience or I'm talking to the head of digital workplace, this is the conversation. This right here, everything I've just talked about is the conversation. So hybrid is an interesting model. That's increased the complexity factor for us. And I'll show why in just a moment. And the questions, you know, we're in the middle of a distinct return to work moment. Like here in DC, you know, 80% of office space until recently was unused. We spent, I think, $6 or $7 billion a year on it, and 80% of it's unused. And so there's now this kind of, hey, go back. It would be great if you could come back. And I see with a lot of enterprises that were very supportive even of hybrid for a long time are all kind of like, well, it would be nice if we came back. But it's never going to go back to the way that it was. The data is clear there. So we went to almost half of American workers were remote from just 5% before the pandemic, 6%. Depends on whose numbers you use. And we're back down to about 19% are remote. That's still 3 times what we had before. And I do definitely run now into companies that have either eliminated all their office space or are very equitable, even very large companies that are just saying, hey, work where you like. That's fine. I mean, it's definitely a thing to stay. But if you look at it, I'm going to give you one of my complex diagrams. So I'm not going to walk you through all of it here. But if I was going to give you the picture of the entire digital employee experience, every key moving part, this is it right here. I maintain this and update this all the time. The challenge is that hybrid work now has a distinct remote journey and a distinct in-office journey. The employee experience has now 2 tracks. You now have to think of the employee experience. Not only does it have to bridge those 2 worlds, but for example, onboarding a remote worker is very different than onboarding an in-office worker. And that's the most important experience, by the way, to enable. My research, I've resisted it for years, but my research and the HR Institute and so many others have said the single most important employee experience is the onboarding process. That is the largest impact on retention of anything. Everything else is just a rounding error, in fact. That's astounding. And in my own projects, I've now measured that same, roughly that order of magnitude effect. But now we have to do it twice. We have to design it once for in-office and once for remote workers. So it's because it's so important, even though it's an afterthought in many organizations. There's some formal program, but it's not the most important experience in the organization like it should be. So workers are on this road, and right now we don't have each side of the road fully built. Almost no organization does. So right now remote workers tend to be the ones that are doing without. They don't have equity in their employee experience. And it's hard, but it's because we have to stand up. Not all experiences will be different. But you'll have to evaluate every single one. If you're going to build a hybrid workplace of the future, and the future is hybrid, some form of it, where your dial is will vary. We have suddenly, in the last 4 years, had to build a full-strength second path for workers in which we're not doing it fast enough to really to help those workers climb that hierarchy. So we have a lot of work to do. We need to speed up. The evidence is clear over and over again. The organizations that go too slow keep getting disrupted before they even finish the last thing. So we have to get faster at adapting. That's one of the reasons I said adaptation to change as part of resiliency. That's so critical, and we have to get that right. So this is what we're building right now. This is probably accurate for the next 3 to 5 years for most organizations. I have even a position where AI is and all of that. And I've written things that explain everything that's on here. But I just wanted to show you what it looks like. And as I mentioned earlier, we still have to fix the basics. In fact, you can't do these big, important things until you fix the basics. Because you won't even be given permission. They're like, don't even tell me you're going to give me AI in all these places and all these things. I can't even use any of this stuff on a mobile device without having to log in 45 times. So you have to get the permission by also fixing. Get the bottom of that hierarchy fixed, really fixed, so that it's consumer grade. It works all the time and it's easy. And you have to build a right culture. Here's the other one of my biggest lessons in doing this for over 25 years is you can't change the technology and not do anything for the people. You need a culture that is adapted to this. So managers who believe by management by walking around are very ineffective in a hybrid culture when you can't walk around anymore. You have to virtually do it. And how do you do that? How do you lead an organization through a Wi-Fi connection? We don't teach that even today. We're getting a little bit better now. I'm starting to see that we actually do have some of that formal education being given to today's managers who are going to school a little bit. But we have a lot more. What I call network leadership, which I've written a lot about. We need to understand how to run our organizations, even if they're entirely virtual. And everyone will have some part of their team being virtual. How do you make them inclusive? How do you make sure you're giving them all the information and the resources that they need to work effectively? And then once you have that, then you can start you have a proper place to start putting AI into what you're doing. So that's starting to take us into the AI conversation, which is the shot heard around the world. I've never seen anything like it. Boards of directors are demanding that CIOs do something now about AI. We usually don't hear, maybe a little bit about digital transformation and a lot about cybersecurity, but normally boards don't ask anything of the chief information officer. The boards are more focused on the business. And so now generative AI is going to get into this stack somewhere. And I'm going to show you where the places it's going to be in the stack here as we go through this. And so let's talk about that. AI in the future of work. It is the imperative. Do something about it, because if you don't, it's going to pour in over the edge of the ship anyway. It doesn't matter. There's nothing you can do to stop it. So you have to enable it, put guardrails around it. Everything that can be intelligently improved with AI will get AI. Pretty much every system is going to be powered by AI in some way. And so we have some things we have to do, including explaining what's going to happen to workers. So headlines like this are still running around. AI could replace 80% of jobs in a few years. Things that were formerly very difficult, things like coding, AI is extraordinarily good at coding. One of the things I track just to keep my finger on the pulse of all this is I go to GitHub and I look at the popular repositories, one of the most popular repositories of the day, and most of them are AI projects, right? Like over half any given day are AI, the most popular repositories on GitHub. One that's on there right now, super popular today, is a DeepSeek Coder. Is a project that it's a system, an AI that does project-level auto-completion. Think about that. Project-level auto-completion of coding. So if you want a system that will do something, you only have to describe it. It will auto-complete the entire thing, the entire system. It's been trained on like 2 trillion lines of code on every language in both English and Chinese. And it's free, by the way. So it's that kind of immense power. So what will that do? So far, it hasn't affected any unemployment rates that I can tell. And the reality is, if you look at previous technology revolutions, which we've been through a lot, by the way. We're here deep into it, so we haven't seen all of the Industrial Revolution and things like that. But in general, we see that the old jobs shrink. Yes, they do. But new jobs are created. We have relatively low levels of unemployment. The closer you get to the technology industry, the lower the unemployment level is, in fact. In IT, we've got often negative unemployment. So there's just simply not enough people to do all of these things. Not nearly enough, in fact, is the case that I'll make. So just like the shift from scribes that used to copy and make all books to the printing press created entire new industries. A dozen new industries, from newspapers to encyclopedias and so on, were created and made possible because of the printing press. One industry turned into 12. Internet did that in spades. It took the same thing, a digital printing press created hundreds of downstream industries that were thrown off by the internet, hundreds of industries. And AI is a technology of equivalent power and will likely throw off hundreds of new industries, not hundreds of roles, hundreds of new industries over time. And we can look at this. There's actual data looking at the old revolutions. You look at that jobs that didn't exist before at all, that's the dark blue on this, account for most employment growth as you go through these revolutions. So that's the good news. Long term, we don't have much to worry about. AI is going to make us really, really busy. Short term, however, AI is so powerful, it will indeed cause temporary dislocation. It's going, and we will start seeing the effects. We're seeing in certain industries like marketing and customer service that are relatively easy to apply AI to immediately. But now we're even seeing that there's been pent-up demand for software developers for so long, and now AI can write code. Over half of all software developers use AI today for code acceleration, for saying, I don't have to get all the syntax right. So that's a huge shift. In 1 year, over 50% of software developers are now using AI to accelerate their work. That's an amazing thing. So the AI revolution is just at the very beginning. We're at what I like to call the cave painting days of AI. And so much more is about to come. And we'll highlight some of those things. But the levels of investment, the budget asks I'm seeing, especially large organizations. I just got done with a CIO roundtable where we looked at everyone's AI and data strategy. And man, they have, over the last 18 months, they have tripled in size and complexity. Much larger budgets now that we see the big breakthrough that's possible. So let's talk just big picture for a second. There's really two main important types of AI, but only one that we really have to worry about today. We have to start thinking about the other one. Weak AI, or narrow AI, whatever you want to call it, is just applying it to a single task, a specific thing that we initiate. That's where we are today, right? Where we can provide a prompt, and the AI runs off and it does what it does and returns with an answer. It recognizes an object or it looks for the pattern we're asking for. But I found like Google Bard is amazing at analyzing 10K, the financial reports of public companies, and I can look at investment levels of IT. It's amazing. I can go through every 10K in the world in just a minute, not even a minute, and give me tables and views. I mean, it's amazing. I can ask to find patterns in that data. It's astounding. It would take me a small research team to do that. I can do it in one prompt, and otherwise synthesizing knowledge. Now, that's where we are today. Now, what many are building towards, if you look at like what OpenAI and others are seriously saying, well, that's the cave painting version of AI. The strong AI, one that, and we see this in there's a whole series of projects called AutoGPT. They start with auto. They're trying to make AI go of itself. There's a large number of these active projects trying to create AIs that will continue. They'll continue working. You point it in a direction, and they will keep going in that direction without you having to do anything. They'll find out the next questions they have to ask and keep asking themselves those questions. It's an entire, like some mini industry, and there's dozens of projects on GitHub that that are all related to this auto phenomenon, trying to make AI go of itself. All right, it's like a Cambrian explosion of this type of things. And so this is strong AI, or general AI, where it thinks on its own. It can make leaps of reasoning, although I've now seen a lot of research showing that large language models are zero-shot reasoners. They're better than humans. They're actually making some of these leaps already. But they engage in tasks autonomously. That's coming. And we're not talking about consciousness. That, we don't know if we're ever going to get there. And some people say it'll be 10. I've seen estimates from experts who say between 10 and 500 years, depending on which expert we have. Right? So we don't know about the consciousness part of this. We're not talking about that, though. We're talking about an AI that basically can work on a long series of problems in a general domain for us as long as we want it to. And it will come back and tap us on the shoulder when it thinks it needs to tell us something that it is doing. So that's not here yet, but like OpenAI stated, they are working on it. They are trying to get there, and we're building the stepping stone today, and that's what we have. And so the good news overall is just like developers aren't yet being actually replaced, they're using it to augment themselves. They say, I can become a much better, I can take my coding skills up 2 major notches, 3 major notches. I can be a top coder. An average coder can be a top coder. And so mostly, for now, till that general AI shows up, AI will make humans perform like superhumans. That's the big takeaway here. That's exciting. That is exciting. You can become a top player in your field if you use AI wisely. That's the potential we want to deliver to workers. That gets us to the top of the hierarchy. We have to handle all those other things too, like the access and usability. This gets us to full self-actualization. It'll make you a better person along the way as well. That's exciting. That's very exciting. That's the thrills part of this talk, right? So the magic of generative AI, as I'm sure all of you know, is something called a large language model, which is actually a special purpose version of something called a foundation model. It doesn't have to be language necessarily. And when it's not language, let's say it's another type of data set, maybe just images, then that's a foundation model. That's a larger class. But language, for knowledge, people interested in knowledge work like you, the large language model is what we're going to spend most of our time, but not all of our time, working with. And there's 3 branches. There's the closed source LLMs, which have the highest performance right now in general, although there's edge cases, models. There's so many models. Again, I go to GitHub just to get lost in all of this. There's so many things happening out there. There's a whole field of open source LLMs, which have a lot less safety restrictions on them, which we'll talk about. And then there's now a growing set of domain-specific LLMs. We're all going to get a lot of models in our near future. Dozens and then hundreds for every purpose you can possibly imagine, for every domain, every problem, every specific situation, images, every type of data. We'll have different models that are good at different things. And so we're all going to end up with what's now being called model gardens. You're all going to be, and this is as knowledge management experts, you're going to have to be really good at curating helping your organization curate your model garden. That is where you're going to spend a lot of time in your future. That's going to be a job description. Model garden manager, model garden architect, all those types of things. It's one of the many things that jobs and roles that AI is going to throw off. And I'm going to try and give you some pictures. We can't get too deep in this in terms of the different layers, but it is I track this full time just for the future of work, and I can't keep up with the number of players in there. There's just in my space, there's hundreds and hundreds of commercial offerings and hundreds of open source offerings, all in the last 18 months. It's astounding. And so I expect most of you have quite a good working knowledge of how the basics work. But the advanced capabilities of even the tools that we already have, ChatGPT, you can go in there and say, emulate a Linux system. Give it a type of Linux you want, and all of a sudden a prompt will appear. And it will simulate an entire Linux system. It will play advanced game of chess. It'll find all the security holes in a piece of code, right, in just 2 or 3 seconds. It'll write in the style of any known or fictional person. If you have a distinctive name, you can ask it to write like you, because it's read everything you've ever written. and you can have it do all these amazing things. And it remembers a lot of what you ask, which is a real big challenge. That's going to be one of the chills we'll talk about in just a moment. And generative AI really shines at focused work tasks, very specific things. Especially breaking problems down into pieces. It's very good at that and providing solutions. You can ask it to help you do anything you've never done before, and you say, treat me like I'm 5, walk me through every step. And if you don't understand what it says, say, break it down again, even simpler. You can literally do anything. It's like sleeping at a Holiday Inn, you become a brain surgeon the next day type of thing. So what it can't do. Well, that's interesting. That used to be what this slide was called, what generative AI can't do. Well, it's also what it shouldn't do. And it's very easy. They actually couldn't release ChatGPT for a while. It was called something else. I can't remember the name of it right now. They discovered that it can do almost it'll help anyone do any kind of criminal or dangerous activity. You can make a virus. It'll teach you how to make a virus, down to sourcing the lab equipment, setting it up, doing every single step of that process, down to the finest level of detail. Will tell you how to do it, right? Or making an explosive or whatever. I'm like, whoa, we can't let this out. That's crazy. And it creates marvelous misinformation and other things. We don't want it to do that. So almost all LLMs, commercial ones, have a safety layer. The open source ones are a lot iffier. Some of them either have a safety layer that you can turn off or don't have a safety layer. They have been trained on data almost as good as the commercial LLMs for the most part. And they're an open question, what's going to happen there? And as you build your model garden, you're going to be very careful about what you let in. And most of the now hyperscalers have these model garden managers, not all of them, but hyperscalers being the big commercial clouds all have big AI offerings now. And they have tools that let you very carefully carry your model in and make sure that it's responsible and safe and trusted and grounded. That's a big word you're going to hear all the time, grounded. The answers are factual and correct. In business, that's really important, because normally you have to check all the output. But for work, we can't really do that. We need AI that's trusted, as I mentioned before. We need trust, and it has to give the right answer. So we see the grounding. And as I also mentioned, we're in the cave painting days. These AIs actually can't produce or process very much information at one time. They're like in the old 4K of RAM days of the 1970s, the first computers. Everyone's like, woohoo, we can do all these amazing things. But I can only write about 200 lines of code before I run out of memory. We're there right now. The context lengths are short. Like if you want AI to create a new molecule, like a drug, right? So most drugs are a single molecule. To do all that work, it can't fit all that in its context window. It's too much information. Can't handle it. It can only handle like 4K. Like most of the off-the-shelf commercial free AIs you get can only handle 4K of information at a time, or 8K or 32K. There's even one, Anthropic says they can do 100K. You can't create lengthy works of intellectual property that really matter yet, but it's coming. I get briefings from AI vendors all the time, and everyone's working on a big context length so you can have it produce new novel machines and new molecules and new organisms. All right, it's amazing what you can do or shouldn't do, right? So how are we going to get AI in the workplace? So there's three routes, main routes. One, everyone's adding AI to the systems you already have. Those 200, 300, 400, or 3,500 systems you have, they're all going to get AI except for the really old ones. And as a result, my latest CIO survey, 22% of CIOs are blocking all that stuff. They're watching through the firewall who's using what, and they're blocking it. And they're having repeat offenders taken to HR because they're pasting the company's intellectual property, customer information on things right into these systems. And as I mentioned, they retain the data. Now, most of them indicate how they retain the data. And they say they will only retain it for you and things like that. But we don't really know for sure. Nobody knows for sure. Unless you're auditing what they do, you don't know. And you can't release that information to these very powerful systems which may inadvertently use or share that information. And that's a big challenge. So almost a quarter of organizations are blocking generative AI today. But it's going to come in through existing apps. But shadow AI, Man, that is. I was just at a CISO roundtable, Chief Information Security Officers, and they have now a tool, an AI tool that looks at worker behavior, and they can tell when they leave their computer and use AI on their personal device while they do their job. Because they stop for 8 to 10 minutes, and they come back with a whole big piece of input, right? So they go, we know what they're doing, right? So it's very interesting. So shadow AI is I'm a big believer shadow AI is a tremendous source of innovation. You should enable it and put guardrails on it and all that, bring it in from the cold. But not everybody will do that. But you still have to be aware that's a major conduit for you. It's going to happen. And then big enterprise AI projects is going to roll this out, and everyone's going to get a co-pilot for everything they do. Everyone's going to get a personal AI assistant. If you haven't already gotten it, I just got mine. It's pretty exciting. So we're going to. This is roughly what the tech stack is going to look like in your organization, right? So you're going to have all your compute. AI is enormously compute intensive, and every request costs real money. That's all going to fall towards zero in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe. But right now, AI is expensive, and it's going to conflict with your ESG mandates as well, because it uses enormous amounts of compute power, energy, and natural resources. But a lot of value in exchange. But then you're going to have your model hubs and your closed source foundation models that you can't put into your, you're not going to be able to put some of these commercial things into your model garden or model hub, whatever you want to call it. We don't have standard terminology yet. And then you're going to have all your apps built on top of that. So that's kind of the stack that we're getting. And somehow we're going to have to reconcile this with our employee experience stack that I just was showing you earlier. And so, we're all trying to build all these views so that, trying to figure out where all these pieces fit, right? So, in where our models and our frameworks and how do we run it? I don't even have my slide on model ops here, which is how do you run AI at an enterprise level consistently and remove all the bias and maximize the cost effectiveness and all that. We don't even have time to talk about that here. But those are the things you have to figure out quickly. AI is expensive, it uses a lot of resources, but it provides a lot of value, and your board wants it now, now, for competitive reasons, so they don't get disrupted. And so this is going to bring us to a big fork in the road for you. This question's in your lap. Will your organization put its own knowledge into a large language model? You don't want to give that away to the commercial vendors. They will do it. They're increasingly productizing that. So you say, hand us all your data, and we'll build you a model for it. Give us, I've seen quotes between $1 to $5 million to do something like that per year. That will come down. But you must decide whether you're going to do that. And you probably are going to, most organizations are coming to the conclusion, yeah, I got to take everything. All my data, documents, and conversations, one of the models in my model garden has to be our stuff, everything we know. I need to unleash all that knowledge, be able to synthesize on top of it, be able to generate on top of everything that we know collectively as an organization. Some organizations are even talking about putting all their email through it, everything. That's the imperative now. So we have to be able to give our knowledge workers a model with all of our knowledge. That's one of the top things on your to-do list now, suddenly, for 2024. And budget time is over, by the way, for most of us. So we have to figure out how to do all that. So this is kind of my view on we're going to take all our foundation models outside and all of our foundation models we've built inside, and we're going to apply it strategically. But we have to put safety, we have to put responsible AI, and compliance on top of all that consistently everywhere, which is why that whole model ops discussion I alluded to. If you care about enterprise level AI, look up model ops. And we are seeing, I'm trying to find all the data. People are doing this now, so we should have information. Yeah, there's some good studies out there now. So applying it specifically in situated places in your business has the highest value. This is an example of the medical domain, right? That every step in there, we can put AI in almost the entire medical domain, healthcare, to improve the patient experience and everything that's being done. It's really exciting. And for the first time, I've seen otherwise very conservative and slow-moving healthcare industry actually adopting this. But even better, we now have really good data. This is a Deloitte study that was recently published. It says, all right, so is spending more on AI generally better focusing on it for a given task? And their finding was yes. In general, the higher the investment, the more ROI you can get, and it can be up to a 10x factor. So they looked at a bunch of processes, and they found that low investment, you could increase tasks by 20%, but with higher investment, organizations could increase tasks by an average of 200%. That's a huge difference. That's a 10-to-1 difference, low investment versus high investment. And that's what I see consistent when I track high leverage technology. That's what we want. We want technology that provides high leverage to our business. And this is, I see the first initial proof that AI has high leverage and higher investment in general, not always, of course, but in general will provide higher levels of performance. That's exciting. This shows that this has legs. And so where are you going to apply it? Well, there's two buckets. There's decreasing costs on the left, and there's revenue generation increases on the right. And so things like marketing and sales and product and supply chain are the top of the revenue increase. But there's also lots of cost savings in things like supply chain and manufacturing, even risk and even HR. So a task we would not normally see be high priority. And so we're going to wrap up here briefly. I'm not going to take questions here. They've set up a table for me, I think out in the showcase, and I'll be there to take questions and talk about this. But now every worker can code. That's where this is really taking us. I've been tracking things here in Washington D.C. The FDA was falling behind on its 300 inspection applications they use for different inspections. They applied low code using AI and were able to generate those 300 applications in a very short amount of time, and finally, for the first time in their history, catch up. They were slowing down the nation's economy. They were so behind on updating these 300 applications with low code and process mining. Great story. And so I believe that low code's key for us to actually digitally transform fast enough. I talked about organizations are not doing it quickly enough. Low code will get us there. And so we're going to be talking with AI to build our apps pretty much going forward. I still code, and I find that I code a lot more now because it's so much easier. I don't have to spend time remembering the language anymore. I just got to know enough about where to put it and how to compile it. I can ask the AI to build me something to do this or do that, and it just does it, and almost always right the first time. It's scary. So within 3 years, most workers will have the skill. We can do it today, and it's getting better. I mean, I was seeing some of the demos from Google, Google Cloud Next. They're just verbally describing applications and seeing them pop up in real time on the screen. Astounding stuff. Modifying. You then can modify and maintain that app with natural language. That's the future. That's the formally complex becomes simple. That's how civilization advances. And so we're going to get all these generative AI and all these new capabilities in the employee experience stack. And the most important thing here of all is we still have a mandate from COVID, from the pandemic. We have more budget than we've ever before. I've never seen so much money running around employee experience. Use it. We have a historic opportunity, and AI is just pouring more money on top of that. And you got the board behind you now saying, do something. We can't miss this opportunity. We don't know if we'll get it back. And then finally, this is the road ahead. I promised you, I'd tell you where things are going by 2030. I'm going to be doing a weekly series on each one of these. We don't have time to go into this. I just want to show you how much is coming. These are things that I have a 70% certainty or higher that's going to happen by 2030. From fully automated workforce, virtual reality will become the primary user experience. Wait to see the Apple Vision Pro next year. It's going to be astounding. So this is where we have to get ready for this. If we don't fix the technical debt, create the right employee stack, put AI in that where it goes, we will not be able to deliver on this, but our competitors will. These are all things that the employers of the future have to have. So if you have to do one, this is the last slide. If you do one thing, again, I like focusing on what matters. What's first principles? Provide unique and differentiated AI capabilities. And they have to be unique and differentiated because everyone's getting AI. in the hands of most workers. If you do that, you're going to get a win. So I hope you found that wide-ranging tour useful in framing up the rest of the week. I'd love to talk to you about this more, and thank you very much.